to go.
And live in 3, 2.
Good day, Internet.
Good day, Internet.
Good day, Internet. Can you?
We were just talking with the Discord folks about groupies.
Yeah.
Roger, I feel like you have a question you'd like Sarah to rule on.
Yes. Can you be a dude in a groupie, or does it only apply to women?
No. It's gender non-specific, in my opinion, anyway, because it's like, I know what the term groupie has become to mean, but if you think about it, it's somebody who wants to like go backstage because they really like a band. That could be anybody.
Yeah, I think the groupie often gets used as a substitute for a term that would mean somebody who wants to have relations with the band,
Right?
which could be male or female, but it's
Yeah.
usually used to mean females, and that's not what Sarah's saying. I would back is like that's not the true meaning of a groupie. A groupie doesn't have to be sexual. A groupie
no.
It's like I just love hanging around. I love their music.
Yeah, like I want to be, I want to be cool. You're
But
cool.
think about like if you were a Grateful Dead fan, you wouldn't call them a groupie, you call them deadheads.
Well, I bet that they had groupies.
Right. Well, that's the thing, though. Like, is that groupie a deadhead or no?
Well, but like a deadhead would be somebody who would be like, I want to tour, maybe this summer I'm going to spend a lot of time like in my own bus, like following the band around. Like, I think groupie is a little bit more like, I want to know this musician or this band or this artist. I want to get in with their folks. So yes, the sexual thing is sometimes that gets involved, but I don't think, if I wanted to be, I don't know, I can think of some artists that I wouldn't do it, but I would love to be a groupie because I just want to hang out with them. I want to be invited to breakfast on Sunday.
Because oftentimes the image that people have of a groupie is someone who, as you were saying, wanted relations, but often tends to be a male heavy.
But even that, it's like, why the relations? Because you want to be close to the person. There's various ways that people go about doing that.
So can female bands can have groupies then?
Absolutely.
Oh, of course, yeah. And groupies aren't necessarily heterosexual.
Right. That too.
By the way, thank you, Lion Jim, for subscribing on Twitch Prime for 3 months.
Thank you, Lion Jim. So
and when Alfredo says he's a DTNS groupie, there's nothing.
And and you shouldn't feel that there ever should be anything.
Do you want to get to know Tom better? Subscribe.
Right. Different kind of relation, but a relation nonetheless.
I went from very uncomfortable to okay.
Cool. Yeah. Full circle. Fine. So excuse me, I'm back in LA after a blissful, somewhat working, but a lot of relaxing time up in Sonoma County, where I'm from. And it got to the point where, because I was staying at a friend's house and he and his girlfriend were there some of the time, but most of last week they weren't. I was just there with Otis by myself. It was really nice of them to let me stay there. And most of the time it would be like 8:30 p.m. and I'd be like, how much longer do I have to stay up? Like, I'm kind of ready. I'm just ready. I got a magazine. Like, let's turn off the lights and be done with it. Get up early in the morning. It was awesome because I get up early in the morning here anyway, but there's just so much more hustle and bustle of everyday life, as you all know. And there was a bit of a respite from that where I was like, oh, man, I just need to live on a farm.
Well, it's
studio
and just not see people in the morning for a couple of hours. It's really
I have a couple of friends who are moving out of more like Topanga area, which is kind of a rural-ish area of LA, but it's still LA and it's still got people. They're moving out into the mountains on the east, like not even East LA, like way past East LA. And they're getting a ranch on a ranch house on a bunch of land.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
They'll be like 2 hours from downtown. So they'll be a little far out, but they won't be super far.
It's not as if they couldn't go to a show every once in a while if they really wanted to, or, a nice dinner or something. Yeah. It's And I don't know, Tom, I'm not sure how you feel about Greenville, and Roger, I kind of know how you feel about where you grew up for the most part, but I spent a lot of time being like, oh no, that's where I grew up. It's great, whatever. It was a nice place to live as a kid. I would never live there again. And now I'm like, why don't I live there?
I would no. The Central Valley never. Like
Central Valley is different. Yeah,
well,
it's different.
and the part of it is because I only lived there from high school up through JC.
So there's a little less nostalgia, maybe.
It's less nostalgic. I mean, it's kind of weird. I'm nostalgic for when I first got there because it wasn't the town. Modesto basically went through a phase where when I got there, there was around 120,000 people there. When I left, it was already tipping over 200. And so it's grown enormously, but it has all the kind of sprawl. And granted, it wasn't exactly a very dense, a planned community, but it wasn't as sprawly as it is now. And it takes me half an hour to get from one end of town to another, to 30 to 45 minutes, and that's just using the main boulevards. So it's just
Santa Rosa is annoying that way. When I came back down, because I drove back down to LA yesterday and just used Waze, and Waze was like, don't use the 5. So I went down the 99, which I've never done before. I mean, I know what it is, but I mean, we were going. I actually prefer it because there's more to it. Like you see, like here's a new town you've never heard of. Cool. What's the population? 7,000. Oh, cool. Okay, there's a McDonald's, and there was just more to kind of like stimulate me, so I wasn't nodding off.
Well, especially people not from California or who have never driven the 5. Yeah. There is less than nothing on the 5. Like
it is tunnel vision central.
Yeah.
I've driven through Kansas and felt more entertained than I do on the 5. Like it's kind of crazy.
And the 5 was built for that express purpose. And if you've ever, if you haven't driven on it, understand that everyone will try to go through as quickly as possible because they don't want to stay on the highway any longer than they have to.
Iocast says, but then you miss Coalinga and that smell.
The Coalinga cologne.
You get the smell on the 99 just as well. You know what's funny? More than ever, I would say 75% of the huge semis that you're having to pass every 5 seconds were all Amazon trucks.
Yeah.
I've seen them before, but at this point, I'm like, it's the majority are Amazon trucks. Or at least when I was, last week and yesterday.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I kind of just
you're just on an empty road. There's nothing around. Even the places to pull over and get gas and food are like just 2 gas stations and 3 franchise, fast food places.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
Not even interesting. And then you're sitting in the left lane, going slowly past trucks, because if you get over to the right lane, you'll just get stuck behind a truck.
Well, and you can't just hang out in the left lane either because there'll be somebody going 95.
Oh yeah, no,
right on the back of you, and you're like, then you're uncomfortable, and
there's
like
no good way to drive.
So you have to actually do a weave thing the whole time.
What I do is, and anything I hear, I say here for on the way I drive is not a confession. I will go the speed of traffic flow. So whatever, or how fast, but and I'll keep that up for about 30 minutes, and then I'll pull over let about 5 or 6 cars blow by me, and then get back in. Yeah. Do that because
I generally stay in the left lane as long as I feel like there's not enough time for somebody to really get past me on the right.
Yeah.
That semi. However, if there's lots of time, I'll pull over to the right. Although sometimes when you pull over to the right, then people just try to get past you on the left and can't. And then you end up backed up behind the semi, 10 minutes later. It's just impossible.
And then you have that person who's like, they're right on your rear bumper. Like it's super unsafe. Like if you braked, they would hit you kind of thing. And you think like, what a jerk. And then you get over expecting them to blow by, but they were actually that's just actually how they drive.
It's just how they, exactly.
So they're actually they're just kind of hanging out kind of next to you. And you're like, oh God.
I cannot stand people who drive right next to you because it's
like, you're like, stop that.
It's actually very unsafe because
it is. Yeah. It's full of blind spots.
I mean, I understand on a packed freeway, obviously they could drive right next to you. There's no other choice, but if you have a choice, but don't do that.
I am guilty of going slower than, especially if I'm just kind of like, I don't know, I'm going to be on the road for 9 hours. Like yesterday, there were a couple times where I was like, oh, speed limit's actually 70. I'm going like 63. Can pick it up a little bit here, Sarah, because I'm just used to 65-ish. But
Yeah.
there were definitely certain stretches where I could go faster and everybody else was. But yeah, the etiquette of driving is, I know it's relative,
It's
but
very relative.
but
Yeah.
there are just certain things where I'm like, I would never do this. But if somebody's trailing at that speed so close behind you, like you just make them rear end you and then like get your bumper fixed.
Yeah.
It's like, don't do things like that. Why would they want to do? Why would they trust me not to do that to them?
I don't like people who brake check.
Ugh.
If I understand it can be
You don't
frustrating,
like
but
people to check their brakes? I think that's important to check your brakes. You want to make
Yes.
sure they're in
no,
proper
I
order.
don't I don't like non-brake checkers either. How dare you?
So you brake check.
You're talking about people who just keep their foot on the brake.
No, brake checkers are people who get upset at someone who might be tailgating them, and they just really hit the brakes like hard for a few seconds.
Oh no, never do
That's what
that.
I'm talking about. Is like
That's a
where
brake check.
you're like
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of goading somebody into like
It's
an
like, don't do
accident.
that. Like,
I think what could be acceptable, maybe it's not, but I'll let you guys decide, is touching your brakes so your light goes on,
Mm.
but you don't actually slow down.
Right, just to be
Actually
like,
slow down is
whoa,
dangerous.
heads up here.
But if you like just touch your brakes, the light goes on to let them know, hey, you're a little close. I think that might be acceptable.
well, I've never, at least when I've driven, I've yet to see it done where someone actually hasn't slowed down. I think it's a skill. That
Could be an optical illusion. Though.
I have definitely, when someone's tailing me way too close, I've definitely just been like, I mean, I'm not going to try to get into an accident with them, but I'm also not pulling over to the right. I'm just like, you know what? I'm already a little over the speed limit and you can chill.
My thing is like if I'm carrying my kids with me, it's like whatever, do whatever you want.
Oh, and Thrumwald points out
I'll move.
tapping the
pull over.
brakes, not keeping your brake light on. Because if you keep your brake light on, then they get no signal that you're slowing down. So just kind of not.
Well, if you keep your brake light on, it's because you're braking.
No, you could hold your foot on the brake in such a way that the light stays on, but you're not braking.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I've never done that.
But
New party trick for my
don't do
next road trip. No, I won't do that.
I have slowed down when someone's tailgating me.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean. Where I'm like,
Point where they
you're
then got to
the
right
unreasonable
around me,
person.
and I was like, yes, that's what I wanted you to do.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen people do like a weird Mad Max, like auto fight, like they weave. It's like one person gets really pissed and starts chasing the other one, and they start weaving. Like you see that. It's the worst.
What also with Waze in particular, although other apps do this too. It'll be like police reported ahead, and sometimes they're there and sometimes they aren't. But it's like I would like the heads up. The way that I want a heads up if there's debris on the highway or a car is on the side of the road. But sometimes you'll hear that, and like yesterday on Highway 99, which is it's mostly 3 lanes, but in some parts it's 2. I mean, it's not like a huge freeway. And there would be somebody, like just showing off. Somebody in a fancy car, just like really showing up, like to the point where it's like they're going to kill somebody eventually. And I have just heard like police reported ahead, and I'm like, isn't everyone using Waze? Like, why would you do that right now?
Well, because they're going to slow down this real soon.
And from what talking to a CHP officer, what they do is they have planes that fly overhead, and that's what they look for. They look for cars that weave in and out of traffic. And what they do is they radio ahead, like say before, and they'll have an officer stationed at like a stop, and they'll start rolling, and they catch up with you, and they'll pull you over.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know. We're all daredevils and in our own minds in many ways, but the highway is not a place I choose to exercise that.
Yeah, I am one of those old fuddy-duddies who
Totally.
prioritize safety above everything. I don't like changing lanes because I know that changing a lane increases my risk. So I won't. It frustrates people I'm driving with. I know. I apologize. But
I'm
not changing lanes, even though it's very obvious that getting that lane would be faster. Because I'm like, you know what? I don't know that it's clear. I'm gonna wait until I'm certain it's clear to change that lane.
Right. And I do there's a certain amount of respect I have for people who are great drivers. And when I say great, I mean like, wow, I had like just enough room to get in there and I did it. It's like, okay, good hand-eye coordination or something, but that's not me. Just gonna go
Well,
ahead and
Dave
chill at the
underscore
speed limit.
Dave underscore Ruff has just arrived in our chat room.
Well, hello, Dave underscore.
Yeah, I hope everyone is looking. If you're watching us on Twitch, that you're looking at the chat at twitch.tv/goodday-internet like we are, so you can welcome Dave.
You know what?
And now that Dave's
I wasn't in Twitch all last week because I had
oh yeah,
somewhat spotty internet, so I didn't want to, use
right.
the bandwidth for anything. So I'm back.
Well,
Hello.
let's get going for Dave. This one's for Dave. Also for Anna. You'll find out why.
This one's for you, Dave and Anna.
All right, here we go. In 3, 2. The best way to support the Daily Tech News Show is on Patreon. Did somebody cough?
Wasn't me.
Oh, sorry, that was me.
Sounded like a little dog.
All right, starting over in 3, 2. The best way to support the Daily Tech News Show is on Patreon. Anna Balash has supported us that way for 5 years. Join Anna and get more at patreon.com/DTNS. This is the Daily Tech News for Monday, July 15th, 2019. I'm Tom Merritt.
And back at Studio Feline, I'm Sarah Lane.
And I'm Roger Chang, the sweating producer.
We're actually all in Los Angeles and therefore all sweaty. You don't need to know that. We're going to keep you cool with the important tech news of the day. This is one of those days where we are going to give you the things you need to know to sound smarter in the room. They may not be the craziest, weirdest, clickbaity headlines out there, but you're going to be better informed because of them. Let's start with a few tech things you should know.
After more than a year, the Republic of Chad has restored internet access to social networks, including Facebook and Twitter. More than a year. The blocks were put into place in March of 2018 following political protests.
The Economic Times reports Apple has stopped selling the iPhone SE, 6, 6 Plus, and 6S Plus in India. That means the entry-level price of an iPhone in India is now about 8,000 rupees higher because you can't get those entry-level phones anymore. Apple raised revenue in India in 2018 and 2019 despite lower volume, leading to an apparent focus on value over number of units. They're just going to lean into being a premium supplier in India.
Console Mac reports that the newest MacBook Air, which was announced last week, has a slower SSD than the 2018 model, with write speeds slightly faster but read speeds about 35% slower, which likely relates to that MacBook Air also getting a $100 price discount. Console Mac used Blackmagic disk speed test on the new Air, hit speeds of 1.3 gigabits per second read and 1 gigabit per second write. The 2018 MacBook Air achieved 2 gigabits per second read and 0.9 gigabits per second write.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the new Qualcomm SoC, system on a chip, not thing you put on your foot. Qualcomm announced the Snapdragon 855 Plus SoC, which features higher clock speeds than the existing Snapdragon 855 that isn't called Plus. The Snapdragon 855 Plus is targeted at gaming and VR. It includes the 8-core Cryo 485 CPU with the main core clocked up to 2.96 gigahertz, paired with an Adreno 640 graphics card that Qualcomm claims will be 15% faster than the standard 855's graphic card. The SoC will only have 4G on board, so 5G will need a separate modem if you're going to get this in a 5G phone. The Snapdragon 855 Plus will be available soon, with Asus confirming it will be in the upcoming ROG Phone 2, the Republic of Gaming Phone 2. That's coming July 23rd. And the Galaxy Note 10, coming August 7th, is likely to use this system on a chip as well. This is not a huge update, but it's kind of big news right now because it's going to show up in phones soon and it's going to provide a little more power for gaming. I think a lot of people are surprised that it won't have 5G built in, but it doesn't mean it can't be in a 5G phone. It just means that phone's going to have a separate modem part for that. I would assume Qualcomm eventually to have this kind of power upgrade with a 5G modem built in. But for now, not that many people need the 5G phone anyway. And your Note 10, I think, could take good advantage of this little power boost.
Absolutely. Well, I don't know, Tom, Roger, or anybody out there, if you use Twitter for the desktop. I do not. but a lot of people do. And Twitter has decided to roll out a new desktop version to the public that uses it that includes a new left-hand sidebar that points to things like notifications, direct messages, explore, bookmarks, lists, and the like. Direct messages in particular feels a little bit more like an inbox, at least in compared to what it was before, where you can view and respond to conversations all in one place. Profile switching, support for more themes, and advanced search all got updates as well. And it's rolling out now. Tom, I don't know if you're seeing it yet, but I am not.
I have not seen it yet. I'm going to reload right now.
Yeah,
If
I'm
that has
kind of.
changed.
I reloaded right before
No, it
I told
has
you all
not
about it.
changed. Not for me. But I have to say, the first thing that struck me about this was it reminded me of how Netflix added a left sidebar to its Apple TV app, and a bunch of its apps. And I think for a long time, designers of UX were trying to avoid the sidebar, the left sidebar, and it just seems to be coming back into vogue now. Like, you know what, we give up. I guess the left side nav is not going away. It does look a
And
little
what
more
was that
cluttered.
really in favor of? Just drop down so that you could increase your real estate on the left side and put
Yeah, it
something
was a
else
cleaner
there?
look, right? Because
Yeah.
this is a cluttered feel. This new look, when you look at the screenshots of it, I'm like, oh yeah, there's not a lot of room for the tweets in the middle,
Yeah.
but navigationally, it is a lot easier to see the things that you need to choose versus when you just had like two or three options across the top in the older version. Then, like with tabs, sometimes when you wanted to find something, you had to guess which one of those tabs or which actual nav option it was hidden in. So they've pulled some stuff out of the more section and put it in the left side nav, which is good, like for finding direct messages now. And I think the fact that direct messages is beefed up is great, but it's funny. Both the direct message screen and the Twitter home screen are more cluttered. The direct
Mhm.
message screen being more cluttered is a good thing to me because it's like, oh, now it feels more like a
A
messaging
place.
handling system.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. It sort of reminds me, and I know Twitter has its own agenda here, but it reminds me of Facebook's recent messaging about Messenger and the fact that the company understands that not everything needs to be public, and there's private group chats going on, and Twitter's direct messages has supported group chatting as well for some time. And if Twitter knows, and they do, whether or not we're all using DMs. I don't use them very often, but I think if it was a better experience overall, I might use it the way that I use Instagram direct messaging for whatever reason. That's something that, is pretty prolific in my friend group. So, yeah, I mean, it makes sense that Twitter's like, hey, we got all these features, right? We might as well throw them at everybody, make it more prominent, at least for the people who are using desktop.
Yeah, I have a lot of people, especially people outside the United States, who use direct message to communicate, and so having that work better on the desktop is great. I think the other interesting thing is they have hidden moments. Moments has now moved into the more menu. So I would expect moments to eventually go away, but they
Yeah.
prioritized explore, which is trying to show you more things they think you will be interested in, which, the curse of the algorithm, right? That's always a little dicey if it's putting you in a bubble or something. But I've never used moments or explore, so I don't think it's going to change my own personal use, but it might change the experience for a lot of people.
I'd also like to know, just out of curiosity, if anybody wants to write in, if you prefer desktop Twitter, why? Because I specifically just use Mac apps whenever I can. I've been using Tweetbot forever, so there are so many Twitter features that I know about because we talk about it on the show, but I don't actually have because I'm using a third party app. But I'd love to know if what about the desktop experience is advantageous.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, TweetDeck users like myself chime in as well. It'd be
Yeah.
interesting. Facebook's David Marcus posted his prepared testimony in advance of his appearance before the U.S. Senate on Tuesday and the U.S. House on Wednesday. Marcus says the Libra Association has no intention of competing with sovereign currencies, no intention of entering into monetary policy. The Libra Association plans to register as a money services business with the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network and will comply with anti-money laundering laws and the Bank Secrecy Act rules. So they're saying all the right things. We want to be a, check cashing place, essentially. We don't want to be a bank. Marcus also said that Libra will not hold personal data beyond transaction info, and personal info provided to Facebook's Calibra wallet, which remember is a separate thing from the Libra Association, will not be shared with the social network or used for ad targeting. We have talked about the fact that you could opt to change that, we think, but we'll see how Calibra rolls out. Right now, he's emphasizing that by default, Calibra won't share information with Facebook. The Libra Association is headquartered in Geneva and will therefore follow Swiss federal data protection regulations for its privacy policies. So, you know what? I have a feeling all of this is going to be lost on the people asking the questions over the next 2 days, because already ahead of the testimony, U.S. House Democrats are considering a bill called the Keep Big Tech Out of Finance Act. The wording is highly targeted to make Libra illegal, or at least to make Facebook's participation in it illegal. It's still being finalized. It has not been introduced, but the current wording would ban platforms with global revenue of more than $25 billion or more from becoming or being affiliated with a financial institution. So 25 billion or more, well, there's a handful of companies that meet that. And among those, the ones trying to be affiliated with a financial institution in the form of being a member of the 27 or 28 people running the Libra Association, there is one, Facebook. So this bill would target Facebook the way it is currently worded. A platform is defined as offering to the public an online marketplace, an exchange, or a platform for connecting third parties. TechCrunch speculated that might apply to PayPal at some point, but it doesn't make $25 billion or more. So at this point, it doesn't. Really does seem like all the House and Senate want to do is make Libra Association not happen.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of, from what I can see, a combination of people saying, I don't understand this, and therefore I am frightened by it. And then you've got the other camp of, keep big tech out of finance. Those little finance guys, they, don't run over the financial institutions. There's a lot of incentive from people who work in finance to say everything's fine. Why would you want to recreate this? Nothing is wrong with the way that currency works now. There is no reason that tech should be involved, and that is super short-sighted.
I think my best guess is we're going to hear a lot of very uninformed questions over the next 2 days that don't get to the heart of the matter, that don't get to the actual issues of how will this be used? Will it in fact help the unbanked? If you don't have enough money to have a bank account now, how are you going to buy your Libra? I would like to hear a lot more. That Marcus has done a few interviews on that topic, but that's what I'd like to hear him talk about. I don't think that's what we're going to hear. We're going to hear a lot of grandstanding that allows an elected representative to campaign on the people who leaked your information and swung the election against whoever you wanted to win, want to get into money, and we're going to stop them. That's really the message that the elected representatives want to get out there, and it's in contradiction to what I think the Libra Association is actually trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't really know how Libra will or will not affect my life because I don't have the opportunity to use it yet in any capacity. There's a lot that Facebook kind of isn't saying yet, and I think that that's by design. So I understand the confusion on a certain level, but to say, well, this is just going to be a whole thing for criminals that's not true either. It's Prime Day for protests, everybody. See what we did there? 2,000 workers are on strike at 7 Amazon stores in Germany with the slogan, "No more discount on our incomes." And a 6-hour stoppage is being conducted in an Amazon site in Minnesota as well. We talked about that on Friday. Leafletting and protest organized, but the GMB Union at the GMB Union are happening at several Amazon sites in the UK as well. Amazon says its pay and working conditions compare favorably to similar businesses and doesn't expect the protest to impact deliveries. And Gadget's Nicole Lee has her story on the Minnesota Amazon strike up. As she mentioned, she talked about it a little bit. She was our guest on Friday, and we spoke with her a little bit more about it at the time. So, the fact that it's Prime Day is it's just one of many stories about this.
Yeah, 7 Amazon, I don't know if they're all warehouses or storage locations, but they're certainly locations with warehouse type workers, unionized workers on strike in Germany. is a smaller percentage of the number of people employed by Amazon in Germany. So it's more of sending a message. As Amazon says, they don't expect this to impact deliveries. This is about optics just as much as the House and Senate interviewing David Marcus is. They're trying to say, we don't think Amazon is treating us well. Amazon says, no, we treat you great. What are you talking about? I don't expect this to really have any impact on Amazon's big sale that they're operating right now. But it is an indication that the workers are unhappy, and there's enough of them unhappy to cause some protests around the world in various locations. So it's a problem that's not just going to go away, right?
Well, this is also protests work this way right now. Yeah, I actually ordered something same day on Amazon that I needed because I had been traveling and I needed a certain cable that I left up in Sonoma, and it came within a couple hours. Great. So there are many reasons that Amazon works wonderfully for me, especially in a pinch. But if enough workers struck, then it would be a problem on Prime Day because this is something that gets a lot of hype, and the company, tries to kind of turn into, a holiday of sorts, and it gets a lot of attention. And if you don't have your workforce, you can't execute it.
Yeah. And by the way, if you're wondering, like, why aren't we talking about the sale? Because we don't want to do a commercial for Amazon. It kind of disheartens me every year at this time when everybody does stories about the deals. There are certain outlets that's their thing, right? Like CNET had a columnist who talked about deals, and of course that columnist is going to talk about any deals that are happening any given day, including today. But it does feel like there's a lot more light than heat around this sale, and so because of that, I think that's why you're seeing the worker protests focused on this day, because there's all this hype around it. And of course, like you said, it may not be big now, but this is how it starts. Mm-hmm. Some US TV stations have started broadcasting in what's called ATSC 3.0, which, among other things, supports 4K broadcasts with HDR at up to 120 frames per second over the air. Put up an antenna, plug it into your TV, get some 4K broadcast over the air right here in the good old US of A. It also collects information on viewing habits from your net-connected TV and can remotely turn on your TV for emergency broadcasts. Both of those have received some controversy. It's easy to get away from the tracking because you have to have some kind of internet-connected device to send the tracking back to the broadcaster. So if you just don't have a net connected TV, you're fine. Or if your new tuner doesn't have a net connection on, then you would be fine. I guess they could play some bad ball and make you have an internet connection for the tuner to work, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. The remotely turning on the TV creeps some people out, but as long as it really is only used for emergency broadcasts, I'm fine with that. Antennas will be able to receive it right now. If you've got an HD antenna, you'll be able to get the 4K broadcast too. However, it's not backwards compatible with ATSC 1.0 tuners, which is what everybody has had since the digital TV transition a decade ago. So you'll have to get a new TV or a new tuner if you want to take advantage of these new broadcasts. And there aren't any available yet. The new ATSC 3.0 tuners aren't expected until next year. Meantime, stations that are broadcasting in ATSC 3.0 have to continue to also broadcast in ATSC 1.0 for at least 5 years. The expectation is most of them will broadcast for longer than that because they know a big portion of their audience are going to continue to just use the older tuners. And this isn't like the digital TV transition where the government's going to step in and subsidize tuners and all of that. So I would imagine we'll get 1.0 broadcast for a lot longer than 5 years. But if you want the 4K HDR broadcast starting next year, you'll be able to get a tuner. And they're already starting to test these broadcasts so that they'll be there for you when you do.
So I've got an OTA antenna. I watch a fair amount of network TV that way, and they are HD broadcasts. And I don't know, like what 4K content would even be in that package eventually. I wouldn't even want it. I wouldn't care.
Looks great. Over the air broadcast, right? Like,
yeah.
So if you wanted to watch the Masked Singer in 4K, you'll be able to.
Okay. Yeah, I guess there's certain or Wimbledon, right? I mean, maybe you just want to see that grass
on the
crisper,
ABC,
crisper than ever, kind of thing.
Delayed broadcast would have been in 4K.
Yeah, okay. So there are some exceptions, but it also sounds like I don't have to panic for at least 5 years.
Yeah. But no, I'm probably longer. But
yeah,
I say this is for the person who wants to early adopt. It'll be out there next year, and it's good to know that the TV stations are starting to broadcast. I think 40 major market stations have committed to starting their 3.0 broadcasts by the end of this year. So you should have lots of broadcasts available once you do buy a tuner, if you choose to buy a tuner.
Cool.
To get all the tech headlines each day in about 5 minutes, be sure to subscribe to dailytechheadlines.com. A lot of Huawei news happened over the weekend and today. So I'm going to try to combine all of that for you into a digestible form so you can be up to date. The most recent, a senior U.S. official telling Reuters that the U.S. may approve licenses for companies to sell to Huawei in as soon as 2 weeks. We had the president saying they would start approving it. And then last week, U.S. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross said the licenses would be issued if there is no threat to national security. So providing parts for phones, that kind of thing, it would be allowed, one would expect. Now we know within 2 weeks, they're going to start approving these licenses. Reuters sources indicated that 2 chip companies, a customer response management company, and a firm that simulates cross-sectional radar for Huawei are among the companies filing applications. You can expect more to file as this becomes apparent. Meanwhile, sources tell Wall Street Journal that Huawei is preparing to lay off hundreds of workers from its U.S. subsidiary, FutureWay. FutureWay is in the Silicon Valley. It's a research and development subsidiary. And Chinese employees at FutureWay are apparently going to be offered a chance to transfer back home to China. But it looks like FutureWay is going to be shut down, and there will be no Huawei R&D happening in Silicon Valley. Huawei has previously said it increased revenue in the first half of this year. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out when they announce their first half numbers on July 30th. And then 5G. Whoa, lots to say about 5G. Last week, Monaco launched its 5G network using Huawei equipment. Remember, there's been a lot of pressure from the US to get especially European nations not to use Huawei equipment. Huawei announced it will invest $3.1 billion in Italy over the next 3 years, as long as Italy ensures that its new rules on state intervention of 5G networks, and they just passed a decree saying the state can step in and prevent some equipment, if it's a security problem, from being used in building 5G networks in Italy. Huawei said, we'll invest $3.1 billion in Italy as long as you apply that decree to everybody. They want it to be transparent, efficient, and fair. They want all vendors to be subject to this decree. They don't want it to be just targeted at them. And of course, Telecom Italia and Vodafone Italia are expected to jointly roll out 5G infrastructure in Italy. So the pressure will be on them as to what they buy and whether they're going to try to invoke this decree, or whether they would tempt invoking the decree, I guess. In a letter from the chair of the UK's Science and Technology Committee to the UK's Digital Minister, Jeremy Wright, the committee says, we have found no evidence from our work to suggest that the complete exclusion of Huawei from the UK's telecommunications networks would, from a technical point of view, constitute a proportionate response to the potential security threat proposed by foreign suppliers. In other words, you can use Huawei equipment. We don't think it would be proportional to ban it. It's not that much of a threat. However, it does recommend the exclusion of Huawei equipment from the core of 5G networks, and recommends that Huawei equipment be restricted if Huawei does not address security competence. Remember, we talked about on DTNS, the Huawei Oversight Board report said Huawei isn't an intentional security problem. However, they aren't very good at cybersecurity, and they don't seem to be making progress on patching their pretty mundane vulnerabilities. And so this letter says, you're fine to use Huawei equipment. Don't use it in the core. And if they don't improve on patching their vulnerabilities, then we might change our minds.
I gotta say, I love Monaco being like, launched 5G. Here we are. We're Monaco. You know how many people live in Monaco? Not very many. It's a very, very small region. It's hard to compare it to a lot of other countries. But yeah, I mean, and yeah, lots to unpack here.
38,695 people lived in Monaco in 2017.
How many?
38,000.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of, well, I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's really small, little independent nation, but next to Italy. So yeah, I don't know, the layoffs from Huawei's R&D subsidiary FutureWay That is interesting to me. Kind of came out of nowhere. Maybe not for some of you, but I had not heard of it before. I wasn't familiar with what was going on there, and it kind of makes sense that there just going to have to be some changes, particularly in the Silicon Valley area, and that might even be a trend that we see more of from companies that aren't based in the U.S.
Well, you may not remember it as Future Way, but we did talk about on the show before the fact that the U.S. employees of Huawei were ordered not to talk to the rest of their employees. In other words, okay, Future Way employees don't talk to anyone in China.
Ah, yes. Okay.
That's them, right? So this is kind of like just throwing the baby and the bathwater out, saying, you know what, instead of trying to wall off our R&D, you're just going to get rid of it, even if the restrictions are easing. Because don't forget, these licenses are being issued or going to be issued within the next couple of weeks, but they're not issued forever.
Sure.
This is sort of a temporary easing to see how things go, and the licenses could be revoked again. We could go through this whole dance again
Yeah.
in a few months.
Thanks to everybody who participates in our subreddit. Huawei stories show up there regularly, as well as others. You can submit your own stories that you think might be good for the show and good for the community, and vote on others at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. We're also on Facebook. Join our group if you haven't already. Facebook.com/groups/dailytechnewsshow. All right, let's check in with Chris Christensen, the amateur traveler, who's sharing a bit on airport navigation for the blind.
This is Chris Christensen from Amateur Traveler with another Tech in Travel Minute. Great story out of Travel Pulse. A professor out of Carnegie Mellon who's been blind since 14 has launched a navigation app for his local airport, for the Pittsburgh airport, that lets blind people navigate the airport with audio feedback. It works like an indoor GPS, allows you to do everything from finding the gate to find a gift shop or a cafe or just wandering around for a bit. It's not the only app out there like that. Apparently, Louisville International in Kentucky has a similar app, but a great use of technology. I'm Chris Christensen from Amateur Traveler.
Thank you, Chris. That's good accessibility stuff to know. And if anybody's using this, let us know. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com, how well it works for you. Let's check out the mailbag, speaking of.
Let's do it. Michael, who writes in from what he says is overcast and unseasonably cool Yokohama. Michael says, you talked about Amazon recently offering retraining for staff in programming and other fields. Having worked in a Japanese software firm for 15 years, it came as a shock to me how few people we hired for software development had studied programming at the university level, or anywhere for that matter, before joining us. And we had some really good programmers. Everyone who's hired is trained to do the thing that they're hired to do. One advantage to this method is that we had around half male, half female programming staff. When it doesn't matter, when you studied before, anyone can do any task, male or female. So numbers don't get skewed by what's so popular to study. The guy who graduated in marketing is trained alongside the gal who studied education, for example. The purpose of education is to learn how to learn. The company is going to train you in the task you need to do for them, and they'll continue with the training up through the ranks of management. My first two supervisors leading the development teams were the female seniors of the department. This was how everything worked back in the 1990s and the early 2000s. LinkedIn and other Western influence may have changed that dynamic over the past decade. But if the factory worker wants to train to become a software developer and has the work ethic and ability to learn, I don't see why training in a different field won't work. Most of our best programmers and later managers hadn't even used a computer before joining our company.
Now, I already know somebody's going to write in and say, you know, my experience in Japan is not that much gender equality. And while Michael, I think, is trying to make a point about one of the benefits of this way of doing things, I don't think his point was that Japan has perfect gender equality. I think his point was it was an interesting way for him to experience the idea of you don't have to have gone to school in engineering or programming to get a job as a programmer. And maybe what Amazon's doing, even though it's different, Amazon's saying, we'll pay to retrain you. You pick what you want and go train it. And if you want a job back at Amazon, great, but you don't have to. That's a little different than what Michael's talking about. But there is the point of saying, hey, anybody could potentially do anything if they're interested and show enough talent to be able to learn it. And so I'm curious if there are other people who worked in Japan in that same era, 90s through the early 2000s, who had similar experiences. And I know we have several listeners in Japan. Let us know if you think that it's no longer like that, or never was like that. If you think that, feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. But I love this insight from Michael. Thank you, Michael, for sending it to us, because the idea of saying we just want smart people and then we'll train them to do the job we want could be a way to help overcome the challenges of automation and displacement of workers.
What industry uses that? Could it be media? Anybody in media will tell you.
What do you
Well,
mean? Like,
most of the
they'll
people
hire
who,
anyone? Yeah.
well, we'll hire anybody who's smart and wants to do the job. Like,
Yeah.
we don't care what kind of degree you have. I have a broadcast degree, but I mean, does that matter? Nope.
Actually, that's funny, because the three of us working on this independent show all have journalism degrees.
Right. I know, but it is increasingly uncommon.
Yeah.
So there you go.
That's what happens if you have a journalism degree. You just end up going off on your own because you learned how to you learned the principles of it, and you're like, yeah, I can just do this myself.
Shaking your fist. Oxford, comma. That's just me. Thanks to all of our patrons. You make the show. You help those of us with journalism degrees do what we love to do every day.
Yeah, well, we're doing a survey right now. If you go to dailytechnewsshow.com/survey, you can find it and click through to the Google form and let us know what you think. It helps us improve the show. And one of the things we're asking people is like, what is compelling about Patreon? So far, a lot of the answers are just being able to support the show. And we love that because really, if you do become a member, we try to give you some cool perks. But the fact that you actually are directly our bosses and we respond to you is what we like most about that model. So please, first of all, go take the survey, whether you're a patron or not, dailytechnewsshow.com/survey. And of course, support us at patreon.com/DTNS.
Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. If you want to contribute, let us know what your thoughts are. Get it off your chest. We're also live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 20:30 UTC. Find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live.
Back tomorrow with Justin Robert Young on a Tuesday because Patrick Beige is on vacation and Justin's leaving on Thursday. We'll talk to you then. Wrong sting.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
You know, one of the reasons we had to wait for Dave Ruff is because Dave worked for a Japanese company in the States and trains up new software engineers without CS degrees, as long as they have some programming experience. It's very departmental, just depends on who's doing the interviewing. Good insight.
Very.
All right, folks, twitch.tv/gooddayinternet is where we stream the show live directly. You can go to dailytechnewsshow.com/live. It takes you to the same place. But when you're doing that, or if you're listening in the Discord, you can use the bang S command. That's an exclamation point and the letter S with your title suggestion. And they all end up at dtns.showbot.tv or gooddayinternet.showbot.tv. And once you're there, you will be read out by us right now. For instance, Zoe Brings Bacon suggested, don't put it on your foot. BioCow suggested, Twitter asks for a sidebar. You judge. Get it? That's illegal. Thrumwald suggested everyone refresh Twitter. Captain Jack 913 says, don't panic for at least 5 years. GPEG84 said OTA 4K is here. Almost. So he suggested Monaco is small.
It is.
We got Mojam suggesting sock it to me.
Oh, I like that one.
Yeah.
Although, what? Yeah. Is there anything about sock it to me that's inappropriate or no? I don't really know what it means.
It was a phrase popularized by the comedy show Laugh-In.
Oh, okay.
In fact, they're one of their most famous bits is they got the president of the time, Richard Nixon, to say "sock it to me."
Oh, when I was in junior high, eighth grade, we did it was like a, I don't even know what you call it, a musical really, that we practiced for months, and it was a whole thing that like the band teacher put together. And it was called Turn Back Time, and so it was like decades over the years. It required you to do a lot of singing. There were some Beatles tunes in there, etc. But there was like a sketch from Laugh-In that was like the kids we didn't know what we were doing. And the teacher kept saying, no, your parents are going to love it though. Your parents will get it. So there were all these jokes that like, we were like, we don't know what these jokes are.
Who's Spiro Agnew? I don't get it.
Yeah. Where like somebody like peeks out from a plant and says, interesting.
Uh-huh.
And like the parents loved it, and the kids were just like, you didn't even see that stuff on reruns. Like we didn't understand. It was just it was a funny thing where you're like, we hope this is a joke. We don't know if it is or not.
It would be like going to a school and having them do a bunch of Will Ferrell jokes from Saturday Night Live now. They'd be like, what is this?
Yeah, right. It just wasn't, it didn't connect. And I think there was probably a lot of emphasis on that era based on how old we were and how old our parents were.
So wait, did we pick a title?
No, we haven't. We got
sorry.
It's a prime day for protests was suggested. Huawei has no future way was suggested. Sock.
Does anyone use Twitter on desktop?
Prime day for protest is not bad, actually.
Prime day for protests is. Where is it?
All right.
I like it.
For GDI, hometown rival suggested farm living is the life for me. Green Acres theme. Anyone?
Yes, that was.
I understood
Gabor.
that one.
Same era as Laughing, so we're hitting the current stuff.
Dun, 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 dun.
I thought it was Jaja. It was
no, Ava Gabor was their sister.
Oh. Well, no, I know, but I don't know.
Check Your Brakes is another GDI title suggested by Zoe Brings Bacon.
Is it? What was it? I think Ava Gabor.
Have You Tried the 5? Also suggested by Zoe.
Yeah, Green Acres. It was her on Green Acres.
Okay.
For Dave and Anna. Don't Do That. Another GDI title. I don't know. I like Farm Living. Farm Living's good.
Yeah.
Farm Fresh.
Farm living.
I'm
telling you guys, we're going to a farm.
My
Let's
sister
all live in a
calls her farm Green Acres.
She calls her farm Green Acres?
She refers to her farm as Green Acres.
Well, there are probably some green acres on it.
I mean, kind of.
What color are they?
They don't really. I think they plant a little bit of corn, maybe some wheat. They don't do soy, which is the big crop around there. I don't think they do soy there, but mostly it's like cows and chickens and horses and.
Oh, I guess I always think of it as like there's grass, so it's green.
Well, yeah, I mean there is grass.
It rains, right? Yeah.
That's the majority of the acres aren't grass though.
How many acres does she have?
I don't know. That's a really good question.
I mean, if you had to guess,
20.
I mean, that's it's decent size.
Yeah, it's not huge though by farm standards. 10.
Yeah.
I'm probably way off. My sister probably rolling her eyes right now and doesn't know why. She's like, "Why am I rolling my eyes? Is Tom saying something wrong about my farm?"
Yeah. Tom said my farm was 20 acres. Has he even been to my farm? Jeez. I don't really have, it's hard for me to, if someone says like, I have an acre, I go, oh, okay, you've got a little bit of land. Not a ton, but I mean, most people don't even have 1 acre.
We had 1 acre. Our lot was the biggest lot on the street. So it was technically 1 acre. It was a huge backyard. I loved our backyard growing up. It had a dry creek that went through it. So in the spring, it would fill up with water and we'd get crawdads in it. And then it would dry out later in the summer.
The house, there were several houses that I grew up in, but the one I grew up in for the longest, so I consider it like my childhood home. It probably had its own 3 acres-ish, but it also just, it backed up onto like 100 acres of apple orchard, which is why I always say I grew up on an apple orchard. Like, wasn't really our orchard,
right,
but it was our yard. Yeah. There was no fence. You just walked into the orchard if you felt like it, kind of thing. And somebody else kind of, I don't know, took care of it. But yeah, I mean that was, and that's like, 100 acres, that's insane. But it was, yeah, and it was big. I mean, you could walk from one end to the other if you really wanted to. I almost never did. But
100 acre wood. That's Winnie the Pooh.
There you go. Yeah. And there are little paths, because people who are obviously tending to the to the trees have their own kind of. I mean, you got to get a tractor in there sometimes, in certain spaces.
Thanks to Clee Climber, who just subscribed with Twitch Prime, thus stealing money from Jeff Bezos and giving it to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff this is gonna smart for Jeff, but
listen,
you know,
it's gonna help more than it hurts.
His reign had to end sometime.
Right. You don't know what we're talking about. If you're an Amazon Prime subscriber, you can subscribe to a Twitch channel and get Twitch Prime for free.
Yes.
We get money when you do that. But you don't have to pay any. So that's why we hilariously describe it as stealing money from Jeff Bezos. It's not really stealing.
Right. Yeah. Sticker looks great.
Zoe Brings Bacon says property in the U.S. is interesting and confusing because every house here, meaning the UK, has a fence or a hedge or a wall marking all boundaries. Well, that's because of the enclosure movement.
Is that true, though? Even in really remote areas, everything has to be bordered by something fenced or fence-like?
No, you said has to be. I wouldn't say that, but I bet almost all of them are.
Yeah, okay.
Because during the enclosure movement, they decided to mark off property, and there was a big movement to just go and like let's put up the walls so these commoners know that this grass isn't a place for their sheep anymore.
Right. Yeah. I love a good fence myself these days.
Some of the property that was granted in the early days of the settlement era of the United States was so huge, like you wouldn't go out and build a fence. You'd just be like, oh, it's from the river to this latitude, and that's yours.
In the neighborhood I live in right now, and I guess a lot of LA is like this, but I don't know. I notice it more than I did previously. Almost everybody's got a fenced in, like you got to open a gate to get into just off the sidewalk. And then there's a yard, and then you go into the house. Yeah. Whether or not there are one or more properties on that land, there's still that first barrier. It's very, and it's not like, I don't know. I mean, fences depends on what kind of fence you like. Some fences are nicer than others, but there's a lot of that, to the point where sometimes you kind of walk by a house where you're like, you just right out onto the street. Oh, put up a fence, because I'm just so used to like that. It feels very peaceful.
I'd say 25% of the houses here have a fence right on the sidewalk. But most of them, the front yard doesn't, but everybody does in the back.
Yeah.
But I've lived in places where backyards just didn't have a fence,
See, that part is weird to me, because I noticed that I think a friend of mine was showing me some property that he was considering buying in Texas. Mm-hmm. And it was like, real nice house and lots of land, and the yards just blended into each other. And I was like, wait, but I mean, you could just run into your neighbor's backyard? And he was like, is that weird? And I'm like, I think it is.
I mean, yeah, you could, but you won't.
You don't, right? But it just there's some like expectation of privacy that I've learned is acceptable and not acceptable.
Right.
But
good fences, good neighbors. That's
that's true.
Yeah. No, I think it was my sister's place in Edwardsville, Illinois. It was a new development, and when they built the houses, they didn't put fences. And so slowly people started to put fences in their house, but it almost became a weird thing if you were the first one, because then it felt like a statement, right?
Yeah, I'm keeping the rest of you out of here.
Yeah.
See, I feel like I would, because if I ever am lucky enough to live somewhere with actual property, I have a dog, and it's like, I love the idea of either. I mean, unless I'm really in the middle of nowhere, I want to be able to open the door and he runs around, but we're still safely enclosed. It's not about keeping anybody out. It's keeping him out of their house.
Yeah.
He would just wander over and ask for breakfast.
I do have a question for you.
Who?
You.
Okay. Go for it.
So we went to the Paul McCartney concert. That was one of the birthday presents. It was great. Paul McCartney, I mean, I don't understand how a man who's 77 years old can still sing high notes. Obviously, he was replaced by a fake Paul McCartney at some point. That's the only reasonable
I
but
don't
yeah,
know. You know,
and
he's a crooner. He's got
he
it got it
like
going on.
3 hours, didn't seem to break a sweat, was, energetic and relaxed and fun the whole time. We were lucky enough, it was his last day of the tour, and so he brought Ringo Starr up on stage.
Saw that photo.
Yeah, so that was kind of cool. We actually saw Ringo walk right past us on the edge of the seats as they were ushering him up, like 6 or 7 songs before that. And Eileen's like, "That's Ringo Starr." I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" I'm like, and we're like, "Is he gonna come up and play?" Then he didn't, and he didn't, and he didn't. So we're like, "Oh, maybe they may just had to
He's
leave."
just here. Yeah.
Yeah, but then, of course, for the encore, they brought him out, or
That's
right before the encore, they brought him out. So it was
that
towards.
probably, yeah, that was real
But
crowd pleaser. But
my
what's the
question,
question?
yeah, my question to you is,
Mm.
and traffic around Dodger Stadium. Wow. How do like we took 25 minutes
The
to
question is,
go
am I okay type
quarter
thing?
of a mile. And I just don't, I mean, I know you're not living on the street that we were driving, but man, just anywhere in that whole region is just covered in cars for the concert. I can't
Yeah.
imagine, Dodgers
Yeah.
playing all the time, other concerts, other events. Like, how people get anywhere over there.
Well, okay. So as I've mentioned on GDI in the past, I live really close to Dodger Stadium. Like it would be maybe a 10-minute walk to like the front gate from where I am now. I mean, it's really close. And there is, I mean, we're in baseball season, and so there is Dodger traffic on certain days. And there are a few reasons why it doesn't affect me. Number one, they close off all of the neighborhood streets, of which I am on one.
Mhm.
So like parking is not an issue. I mean, if somebody really wanted to drive down my street, it's not like it's like
They could figure
totally
out.
barricaded, but it's they funnel traffic kind of away from us onto,
Yeah.
certain arteries.
No, we were trying to follow Waze, and we hit a traffic cop's like, "Nope, you got to go that way." I'm like,
Yeah. So it's really helpful if you actually live locally. But if I, let's say it was Saturday night, right? I didn't go to the Paul McCartney concert, but for whatever reason, I had to get in my car and go somewhere. It would be a hassle, depending on where I wanted to go. So I'm just kind of like, I'm lucky enough that I don't really run into that situation all that often because I drive when I want to, and I kind of I live in a neighborhood where everything is walkable, and so
the
I
the
just
thing about
I just
Dodger
don't. It doesn't
Stadium,
really bother me.
Dodger Stadium that people may not understand is there's no major way of getting to it.
No, it's
There's
kind
no
of on the edge of
not
like a little
yeah,
neighborhood,
it's built
really.
into this kind of basin.
Hmm.
So you have to get off, and there are several freeways near it, but then once you get off the freeway, you have to wind up these roads into the basin.
Yeah,
And those roads are not big, so traffic always gets backed up. And there's
yeah.
no train or bus or anything. Actually, there is a bus. There's a shuttle bus that goes in, um, but there's no train stop or anything. It's not like the Oakland Coliseum.
Oh,
Uh,
but Elon Musk is going to change all that, Tom.
right?
Remember?
No, I know he's going to build a hyperloop right underneath
Yeah,
Dodger.
yeah. That was. I mean, I don't know. It seems to change every day. Chicago
Yeah,
thinks they're getting one too. So
so does Saudi Arabia. Who knows?
we'll see. We'll see who gets lucky. But yeah, no, I have heard, especially friends of mine who have either been in the area or just kind of live in the area, being like, "Oh my gosh, the Dodger Stadium traffic," and I'm like, "These are the perks of not doing anything social ever."
Yeah.
Let that be a
Well,
lesson to you, Tom and Eileen.
the fatal mistake we made was forget, like, if it was a Dodger game, we would have handled this. We would have known when to leave. We
Yeah,
would have had reserved parking at a place that would have been easier to get into. Like, we would have done what we needed to do to make it not miserable. Well,
sure.
for the concert, there's general admission parking. That was all there was. I'm
Yeah,
sure there was
yeah,
probably some VIP something somewhere, but they
yeah.
didn't have the normal, like, fast lane that you could try to get or anything like that. Uh, and
When I
so
don't think there are a lot of concerts going on at Dodger Stadium.
no,
Not
it's
like
not
a Paul McCartney type thing.
and so the other mistake we made was forgetting that the closer to time you get, the slower it goes, because the more people show up closer to time, and then that makes it slower to get in and everything backs up. And so we thought, oh, it's only showing 35 minutes, 2 hours before. It's like, oh, it's only showing 35 minutes to Dodger Stadium. And we relaxed. So we ended up leaving a little later than we should have. And then by the time we got there, turned out, other than the frustrating, like going a quarter of a mile in 25 minutes to get to
And that
turn.
is frustrating.
Oh my gosh, it was the worst.
It's so
Uh,
frustrating. Yeah.
That was just to turn into the road that takes you into the parking lot.
Which one? What did you? Was it Scott? Do you
No,
remember Alvarado? Sunset?
Stadium Way.
Well, yeah, but you got to get to Stadium Way from like Glendale Boulevard somehow. So it
Actually,
would have taken you.
I'll figure that out in a second. But once we got in, we raced around to find the entrance we needed to go in, because that's another thing about Dodger Stadium that frustrates me. You can't just go in and then find your seat. They're like, oh no, you don't want to go in here. You need to go in down over there.
Right. In your section.
Yeah. But once we got in, he hadn't started yet. So in the end,
It all worked out.
Yeah, we waited like in our seats for 10 minutes, if that, and then the concert started. So
That's actually kind of nice.
yeah, we kind of timed out
Yeah.
accidentally. It timed out really well.
Yeah. You stressed out in order to be like, whoa, we didn't wait very long for him to come out.
Right.
you just sat in your car instead of your seat.
Yeah, like, I don't hear any crowd noise. I don't think he's started yet.
Well, I gotta say,
Oh yeah, no, we came up Stadium Way. So
yeah.
we came. Well, first of all, there's this whole thing where I was in line to exit on Academy, and Waze suddenly was like, don't exit on Academy, go up to the next exit. So I foolishly followed that. And then, of course, there was no way I was getting into the line for that next exit. It just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
So then I had to go around and ended up on College. And then they routed me down some side, Chavez Ravine Place to Stadium Way. Going up Stadium Way, past the Lilac Terrace free parking, was 25 minutes.
And you know what? The funny thing about this is, for anybody who's like, I just have no, I can't picture what they're talking about, is this is, again, not far from where I am right now. And in the morning, because I get up pretty early, it's like, these are like nice wide streets and like beautiful lawns, my dog's running around, and like no one's there.
Yeah.
It's so remote in a weird way. Like it's like basically like a big old park. But when there's something going on at Dodger Stadium, the whole vibe changes.
It's like living in a tourist town, kind of, right? It's peaceful and empty most of the year. And then
totally. Yeah. Like no one's, why would anybody use Stadium? Well, I'm sure people cut over on Stadium Way, every once in a while, but it's like, you could almost just like run down it and not see a car, in the morning. But so it goes. Oh,
yeah,
LA.
Sunset to College to Stadium Way.
Yeah. That would be, that's no good.
And then we took the just to complete the way this sounds like a sketch on Saturday Night Live called The Californians. We took the 134 to the 170 to the 2 to the 5.
Yep. Wait, 134 to 170.
Right.
To the 2 to the 5. You go to the from the 5 to the 2, right?
No, we took the 2 to the 5. I'm almost sure.
Oh. So you went around the back way.
Yeah.
Got
because
it.
It was gonna have us get off at Academy, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I see.
Everyone stopped listening at this point. They're like,
Tom, tell me more about your Waze directions. It's important to me because I know these streets.
It's not a crutch.
I wasn't there. It's in the past.
Crutch.
Tell me more.
Anyway,
no, listen, I did a lot of I didn't do a lot of driving once I was actually up in Sonoma County, where I have been posted up for the last 10 days. But the drive up there was arduous. And then the drive back yesterday was, it was long, and I was kind of stressing about it because I was thinking like 4 hours into it, I'm going to start, getting antsy, and there's going to be work. And, I just did not want to do it at all. It was okay. Even in LA, there was a tiny bit of traffic around Magic Mountain, but not really. There there wasn't much to complain about. It was a straight shot. Besides the fact that I took Highway 99 and I'm like, I don't even know where I am right now. Like Delhi, California. Okay, I guess that's a town.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool. That's interesting.
It was kind of
Yeah.
actually it kept me more alert.
You
I've
should.
had it take me down some odd roads, like between the 101 and the 1, like through San Luis Obispo and stuff. I've never had it take me over the valley like that.
Well, when it did, because I was using Waze and I was like, this is wrong. You know, I shouldn't be going to Manteca right now. I shouldn't. I should be going this way. You know, I know how to go. But then I thought, well, I mean, I'm driving, so there's only so much research I can do. But maybe there was something on the 5 that was going to be slow, and this was going to be better. And the 99, I mean, it moved fine. There was no traffic at all.
99 is is actually in some cases faster because there's a portion of the 5 where the 5 meets.
Okay, now we've totally gone back into.
Oh, there goes right.
This is just what we do, you know. But it's also like, okay, so I wasn't stopping for anything more than like bathroom break, get, you know, a stupid sandwich at Jack in the Box, you know, let Otis, you know, have a little pee kind of thing. So I wasn't really stopping, but I also passed like, ooh, Super Target. That would be a good thing for me to like know about next time. You know, like, you could kind of plan your trip a little bit more. Like if you wanted to make some stops that were advantageous to you, the 5 doesn't have any of that stuff. It's just nothing.
On 99, you can stop over in Tulare and just stop at Apple Annie's, which is a pretty good diner restaurant.
I saw it. I didn't stop, but good to know.
They have apple pie.
They have pie. They have.
They better have apple pie, calling themselves Apple Annie's.
It's a nice halfway point, at least for me when I'm driving back up.
Yeah.
Wait,
well, you know, it's funny because
you have apple pie or not?
They do.
Oh,
they do.
Okay. Yeah.
Also, when you and Jen and the kids had gone up to see your folks recently, I was like, oh God, it's gonna be such a long drive. And you were like, not really that far. And by the time when I was on the 99 and I got to Modesto, I was like, oh yeah, I'm pretty far already. Far south from where I was. It isn't really that far. Yeah. I just kind of like think of it as the Bay Area. So it's going to be like 7 hours.
Well,
not really.
The Bay Area used to be faster, but there's just so much more traffic than it was even.
The Bay Area used to be closer, but then the earthquakes shook it farther away.
It did. A few inches. You know. Those inches matter.
They matter when you talk about this kind of traffic.
Yeah. Quarter mile, going to take you 25 minutes.
25 minutes.
Used to take an hour and a half to get from San Francisco to Modesto. It wasn't a big deal. Now it's 2 hours one way.
But and maybe I was again like coming around the east side just in a way that I'm not used to. But I think of Modesto, Stockton as due east of Oakland. But it is it?
It's east and
it's southeast.
East southeast.
Yeah, yeah.
J.C. Calhoun points out that back in 1519, it was a lot quicker to get around the Bay Area too. Well, except you didn't have cars.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know.
But those horses.
There goes that theory.
Those horses were pretty quick over when they had to jump over smaller buildings.
Gonna take his horse to Modesto.
Yeah. Did you at any point get put on the Old Town Road?
I was on, everything was an Old Town Road once I was up in my old stomping grounds. It was,
I hope you didn't have lean all in your bladder.
I did not. Okay, thank goodness. Not much of a lean fan, okay. but wouldn't do it on a road.
Sure.
But it was great. So Otis he's actually been up to my friend's house before, and again, there's a lot of land. It's very remote, and I don't really remember us encountering wildlife, but there are deer all over the place, lizards everywhere, jackrabbits. There's you hear about mountain lions. We never saw any, no bears, not in that part of the world, but it was, he was chasing deer. You can't catch a deer. They're like way too quick for him, and the bunnies would just figure out where to hide, and, he'd lose sight of them. But it's like a dog has never been so happy. And that's why I'm like, we just need to move to a farm.
Yeah.
I don't know when we're going to do that, but that's the ultimate goal.
Once that satellite internet comes, right? And you can just get high-speed broadband wherever you want to live.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you just find yourself some cheap land and
and you
Just
just
park it.
hang out with
drop.
the jackrabbits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get
Yeah.
yourself a tiny home or two, and then connect them together and make a slightly larger tiny home.
You know, the whole like prefab home too. I know that term can mean lots of things, but I think of it as it's sort of
Like a
it's
mobile home.
well, but like prefab homes are cool now.
No,
I mean, like
they are. If the more high end ones are actually very well designed.
they're
and built.
nice. In fact, there's one in my neighborhood. Sometimes when we go on walks, it's been built actually pretty quickly, and I think that's part of the reason that people like it because it's you're kind of just following a model, right? But it is if we walk by at a certain time, either in the morning or night where it's kind of dark outside, like you can see in the windows and it's nice. It's like, oh, that's a fancy house. It just kind of has that barn siding that is a style that
That's
you either like or you don't like, kind of thing.
I mean, if they built those and they just used the standard shipping container as like this is your standard unit sized, it'd be kind of cool because then you could kind of Lego it out. Like, okay, I'll take 2 of these units. I mean,
Well, we've been remiss in not thanking Hometown Rival for subscribing to Good Day Internet.
Hometown Rival, thank you.
During DTNS, Hometown Rival subscribe. Thank you so much. And we should probably wrap things up.
I know. Just gonna chat away if we don't stop this soon.
Well, and we'll end up giving you some more traffic advice tomorrow. Don't worry.
Yeah.
It's fine. We'll be back. But thanks everybody for supporting us, whether it's on Twitch, whether it's on Patreon, whether it's listening to the ads on the show, however you support us. We love it and we appreciate it. And we want you, therefore, in return, to have a good day.
have a good day.
Good day, Internet.